Namaskar. Welcome, learners and viewers. In today's session, we will be discussing agriculture and development. Today we have with us our resource person, Dr. Nisha Varghese. Welcome,
Hello.
Dr. Nisha.
Thank you, Dr. Grace.
Dr. Nisha Varghese is Associate Professor from School of Extension and Development Studies. As we know, agriculture is a very important part of our economy, which is why this particular session will be very significant in understanding the various ideas, importance regarding what agriculture is in India. Let me first put this question to you, Dr. Nisha. What is the contribution of agriculture to economic development?
Dr. Grace, thank you for the question. And definitely agriculture plays a very important role in the economic development, not just in economic development, in the overall development of India, of any country and India in particular. So before starting with how agriculture contributes to the economic development of the country, I would like to give a few points about what is the current status of agriculture in India. The food grain production of India is around 329 million tons. And the horticultural production, that is fruits and vegetables, the horticultural production was around 351.9 million tons during 2022-23. Now, India is also one of the largest producers, consumers, and importer of pulses in the world. India, with a production of around 230 million tons of milk, it is one of the largest producer of milk in the world, and India is also the second largest producer of eggs in the world. Here it is important to state that India has around 15% of the world's livestock population.
Right.
Now, among the commercial crops, India is the second largest producer of sugarcane, tea, jute and tobacco. It is also the second largest producer of crops like rice, wheat, sugarcane and groundnut. India is also the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables in the world, producing around 11% of world fruit production and close to 12% of world's vegetable production. Again, India is the largest producer of ginger and okra which is lady's finger, and it is the second largest producer of commodities like potato, onion, cauliflower, cabbage and brinjal. Among fruits, India is the largest producer of bananas, mango and papaya. The area under floriculture, that is flowers, India has second largest area under flowers or floriculture or flower cultivation in the world. Now, rose, tuberose, anthurium, carnations and marigolds, these are some of the important flowers that are produced and exported from India, and India earns around 88.38 million US dollars of exports from floriculture or export of flowers. So this is about the status of agriculture, the current status of agriculture in India. Now coming to how agriculture contributes to the economic development of India. Firstly, it provides raw materials to the non-agricultural sector of the economy, not just the non-agricultural sector, but also the food processing sector of the country. For example, for sugar, for the sugar industry, agriculture is definitely, the sugarcane is definitely one of the most important raw materials. Similarly, for paper industry, the wood from the trees is a major raw material. And similarly, for textile industries, you have your cotton, you have jute, you have bamboo, you have silk as the raw material. And for dairy industry, you have milk and milk products, which are main raw materials for which come from agriculture and allied activities. Secondly, it also creates demand for goods produced in non-agricultural sector. How? By strengthening the purchasing power of the rural people. When the rural person or when an agricultural laborer is gainfully engaged in farm activities, the income that he gets, he or she spends it on the purchase of different consumables, which also helps in increasing the demand for those consumables, and thus directly or indirectly agriculture also contributes to increasing the demand for non-agricultural commodities. Besides, there are several industries which are into production of farm machineries. For example, there is tractor, there are several farm implements, there are plant protection chemicals like weedicides, like pesticides. Then there are also fertilizers which are directly used in agricultural production. So, agriculture also contributes to creating demand for these industries. Then another point is the savings and taxes of the agricultural sector. They provide investable surplus to the non-agricultural sector. Though it is important to say here, it is important to mention here that agricultural income is not taxable under Indian laws or under Indian regulations. But however, there are other taxes or other taxes, for example, the taxes levied on the transport of agricultural commodities from one place to another, the irrigation charges that are levied, the land revenue that is paid, all these things add to the investable surplus for the government. Also, we earn valuable foreign exchange through selling of agricultural produce. And we also save a lot of foreign exchange through import substitution. Now, import substitution means instead of importing certain commodities from outside countries, India produces that commodity itself, which means it is substituting the import by cultivating that commodity in the country itself. So, through import substitution also, we save a lot of foreign exchange, which otherwise we would have, spent on importing those commodities. Right. So, around 12% of the total exports in India is from agriculture. Also, it is important to mention here that agriculture is a net foreign exchange earner, which means that the exports, the amount that we get from agricultural exports is much more than the amount that we spend on import of agricultural commodities. Now, another important point, how agriculture contributes to the economic development of the country is it provides employment to a major chunk of uneducated and unskilled labor, because most of the agricultural laborers, they are not educated, or they have undergone a very minimum level of education. They have attained a very minimum level of education, and they are mostly unskilled laborers. They have not undergone any skill training, any specialized training for doing agriculture. So this is how agriculture contributes to the economic development of any country in general and India in particular.
Dr. Nisha, thank you so much for the detailed explanation of the current status of agriculture as well as the contribution of agriculture in the economic development of the country. And I feel that it is very heartening to know that India is contributing so much in terms of agricultural products, in terms of giving employment to unskilled laborers, as well as a way of earning foreign exchange. And also, when you get to know with your explanation the current status of India producing milk, pulses, eggs, and so many varieties of flours, rice, and so on and so forth, it gives a very, a very good feeling that agriculture is doing so much for the economy of the country in terms of economic development of the country.
Right.
We have talked about the economic development with regard to agriculture, how agriculture has contributed to the economic development. My next question to you is, what is the contribution of agriculture to the overall development of?
Yeah. Other than economic activities, agriculture does contribute to many other developmental areas. So agriculture is one of the major economic activity, needless to say. It employs around 45.5% of the workforce. Around 45% of the workforce is employed in agriculture. It also contributes to 21% of the gross value added. Agricultural imports to national imports was around 4.9%, and agricultural exports to the national exports was around 10% in 2022-23. So agriculture is an important economic activity. Besides that, agriculture is also, it also contributes to the government revenue. It directly contributes to the government revenue, as we have already discussed, through taxes. And it also comes from other forms of revenue like the land revenue, the irrigation charges, the taxes on commodities purchased by the cultivators, the export duties that are levied on agricultural production, the freight charges by the railways or carrying the agricultural products from one place to another. So all these contribute to the government exchequer. Besides, the agricultural, as I have already mentioned, that the agricultural income is not taxed,
Right.
but other than that, it definitely does contribute to the government exchequer. Another important contribution of agriculture is it ensures the food and fodder security.
Right.
Okay, food security for the people and the fodder security for the livestock population of the country. Food security means that all people have access to physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and also their dietary needs so that they can lead a active and healthy life. Also, the changing population, the changing climate and the rising population, the rising food prices and the environmental factors, they also have an important impact on the food security of the nation. So agriculture tries to, the agricultural production has to rise above all this so that the food security of the nation is ensured. Now, another contribution is it provides several environmental services. By environmental services, we mean several agro-ecosystem services. Each agro-ecosystem, it provides some services to the environment. For example, the flowers that bloom in the agricultural fields, the pollination, the bees go and pollinate. So, pollination is one important agro-ecosystem service because without pollination, the life would actually cease to exist. They say that if the bees will vanish from the earth, then the life will cease to exist on earth. So, one of the agro-ecosystem services that agriculture provides is pollination. Then it also helps in maintaining the genetic diversity. Because of cross-pollination, the diversity or the genetic diversity of the agricultural products or the agricultural crops that are grown, that is maintained because of that. Then it also helps in maintaining the soil fertility. There are certain agricultural crops which are known as the leguminous crops. Okay, they fix the atmospheric nitrogen into the soil. So, the leguminous crops are generally grown side by side the cereals so that the nitrogen from the atmosphere is fixed in the soil and that nitrogen can be used up by the plants. So, it also helps in maintaining the soil fertility. Besides, there is a diverse fauna that is dependent on agroecosystem, and there are several insects which help in checking the pathogens which feed on agricultural crops. Besides, it also provides some cultural and aesthetic, aesthetic services. For example, there are several festivals in India. We recently celebrated Pongal. We recently celebrated, these are all harvest festivals and, festivals which are related to agricultural activities.
Yes.
So it also provides cultural services to any country. However, there are some disservices that are also, a byproduct of agricultural activities. For example, when the soil is tilled, when you plow the soil is exposed to wind erosion and water erosion. Also, the sediments that go from that travel from the water erosion, that travel because of water erosion, they go and deposit in the lakes and in the different waterways, and thus they reduce their water holding capacity. Also, the greenhouse gases, several greenhouse gases are emitted as a result of agricultural production. For example, especially rice cultivation or paddy cultivation emits a lot of greenhouse gases, and similarly livestock production also emits a lot of greenhouse gases, for example methane. So these greenhouse gases act as a disservice to the general environment. And besides, there are poisonings due to pesticides, application of pesticides and weedicides. So these are some of the disservices because of agriculture. So another important factor is agriculture provides several ecosystem services to the people. Then agriculture also helps in reducing the poverty. As we have already discussed, close to 45% of the population is dependent on agriculture for their livelihood. So it is an important source of livelihood for such a major chunk of population. And it also contributes to the GDP around, it also contributes to the GDP of the nation. Then it promotes industrial development. Agriculture sector is not just a source of raw material to the industrial sector, but it is also market to several industrial produce. As we have already discussed, most of the industrial produce, for example, the farm implements, tractors, fertilizers, insecticides. So it is a market to several of these industrial producers. Then, as we have already discussed, Indian tractor industry, it has emerged as one of the largest industry in the world. And it accounts to around India accounts to around one third of the global tractor production. So these are some of the important activities or important ways in which agriculture helps in development of a nation.
I was listening to the contribution of agriculture to the overall development, and what comes to my mind is when we are talking about the various sectors. And when we talk about agriculture, we say that agriculture is the primary sector.
Yeah.
So it is aptly called the primary sector because it has so many contributions with regard to economic development of the country, with regard to overall development of the country, with aspect to providing livelihood, GDP, and so on and so forth. So agriculture is so important for the overall development of the country. When we are talking about economic contribution, when we are talking about overall contribution of agriculture, my question to you is, I would like to ask you this question. What are the challenges which are faced by agriculture sector in India?
Okay, there are several challenges that the agricultural sector in India faces. Let us discuss some of them. One of the most important challenge that the agricultural sector in India faces today is that of land issues. As we already know, the land in India, the agricultural land in India, particularly the land holdings, what we call them, the size of the land holdings has been decreasing year by year.
Yes.
That is because when the land passes from one generation to another, it gets divided and further divided. So the size of land holdings with each farmer, it keeps on decreasing. Now, India has divided the size of holdings into several categories. For example, if the size of holding is less than 1 hectare, then these are called marginal holdings. The size of holding is from 1 to 2 hectares, these are called small holdings. And if it is from 2 to 4 hectares, these are called semi-medium holdings. If it is from 4 to 10 hectares, it is called medium holdings. And if it is above 10 hectares, it is called large holdings. So one of the major problem with Indian agriculture is most of our farmers have either small or marginal holdings, which means that the agricultural land that they possess is either less than 1 hectare or at least less than 2 hectares. So what happens is it is very difficult to mechanize agriculture. Mechanization of agriculture cannot happen on small holdings because it will not be profitable to run a tractor, to use tractor for plowing, to use mechanized way of planting and of sowing seeds, of fertilizers or irrigation. It is not feasible if the size of the holding is very small. So, size of holding is one of the major issues that agriculture in India faces. Another important issue is there are many unregistered cultivators or tenants who do not have land titles. Okay. Now, because they do not have land titles, they cannot access institutional credit. It is difficult for them to access institutional credit. They have to depend on the local moneylenders for the credit, and that is why most of the farmers in India, they remain under debt. So this is one important challenge that Indian agriculture faces. Another important challenge is over-dependence on agriculture. As we have already seen, agriculture contributes to around 45% of the employment and 15% of the GDP. Right. So imagine the contribution of GDP is only 15%, whereas 45% of the population is engaged in agriculture. So, agriculture faces two kinds of unemployment. One is seasonal unemployment and another is disguised unemployment. Seasonal unemployment, why? Because agricultural activities do not happen all through the year.
Right.
Okay, there will be a season to sow. After that, there will be a period where irrigation would be required, some weeding would be required, and then harvesting would be required. So there is considerable gap between these activities, during which most of the laborers, they do not have any work to do. So this kind of the agriculture is marred by seasonal unemployment. Another problem is it is marred by disguised unemployment. Almost the entire family is engaged in agriculture, whereas it may require only 1 or 2 people from the family to do that activity. So this kind of unemployment is called disguised unemployment. Another important challenge is lack of investment. Less than 1% of agricultural GDP is spent on research, because of which Indian agriculture is kind of facing a technological fatigue. There are no major breakthroughs in agriculture, in agricultural research. Then another problem is irrigation and water management. Only less than 50%, only close to 49% of the net cropped area is irrigated. Rest is only rain-fed. And rain-fed agriculture has its own issues in terms of crop failure. If there is no sufficient rainfall, if the country does not have sufficient rainfall, then crop failures may happen. So another important thing is agricultural credit. As we have already discussed, it is difficult sometimes to have institutional credit, and many of the farmers are indebted. So yeah, these are some of the challenges which are faced by the agricultural sector in India. There are several others, but because of lack of time, we can take it up some other time. So that is it.
Dr. Nisha, thank you so much for your discussion on the current status of Indian agriculture, how agriculture contribute to the economic development of a country, and also the overall development, how agriculture contribute to the overall development of the country, as well as what are the challenges faced by agricultural sector in India. Thank you so much for being the resource person for today's session on agriculture and development. And I hope the learners and viewers have got some important points regarding agriculture. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Namaskar.